In the darkest corners of our history, there are stories that lead us to delve into the most disturbing mysteries of humanity. One of these enigmas is hidden in the life of the Smurl family, whose story has been considered a chilling testimony of the inexplicable. Under the title, The Smurl Family Haunting, we discover a story full of terror and supernatural phenomena that defy all logic and reason. Immersing ourselves in the recesses of their experiences, we will leave behind the security of reality to enter a ghostly world where the limits between the visible and the invisible are blurred. In 1973, the Smurl family was forced to abandon their house in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, after the raging floods caused by Hurricane Agnes. Janet and Jack Smurl decided to take their two beautiful daughters, Dawn and Heather, to move in with Jack's father. It didn't take long for Jack's father to offer him a small duplex off Chase Street in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. For Jack and his family, with no money and nowhere to go, the Smurl family accepted the offer, without imagining that this decision would make them go through the most horrible event of their lives. With illusions of a new beginning and wanting to make the duplex on Chase Street a more pleasant place to live, Jack began a series of renovations to the place, and along with this began the paranormal events that haunted them for years. At first, they were unimportant things: a lost tool, a screwdriver located somewhere else, old stains reappearing despite new coats of paint, and appliances turning on and off for no apparent reason. But for the Smurls, like most people, these things had a logical explanation. Relying on their Catholic faith, they decided not to make a big deal of it and went on with their lives, thanking God for having a roof over their heads and seeing Janet's new pregnancy as a promising new beginning. As the days went by, the paranormal events were more difficult to ignore. In the darkness of the corridors, voices were heard that imitated the members of the family. The smell of smoke and rotten meat flooded the house, and no matter how hard they tried to use different aromatizers, the unpleasant odor remained. Shadows that walked along the walls left strange marks that seemed to be caused by the sharp claws of some wild animal adorned the bathtub and different parts of the house, bruises on their bodies, and objects that levitated. In 1974, Mary Jack's mother suffers a heart attack, and it is at this time when the Smurl family is more vulnerable. The physical aggressions caused by the demonic entity increased significantly. The demon that tormented this family no longer wanted to be ignored and would do anything to be noticed. With Mary's health complications also came economic problems that put more stress on this tormented family, and little by little, the arrival of ghosts intensifies. Soon, the twin daughters were born, Karen and Shannon. The family was excited but fearful for the newborns. Janet would often hear Mary calling her, "Janet, Janet, Janet!" And every time Janet would rush to aid Mary, Mary would say that she never called upon Janet. After a while, the same started happening to Mary. She would hear Janet calling her in Janet's voice, but once she would go to Janet, Janet would say the same, that she never called Mary, but it was rather the evil entity playing its sinister mind games. Not long after, in the dark of night while everyone was asleep, Janet was attacked by an evil black entity floating at the foot of her bed. Soon after, Jack became the next target. Lying in bed with Janet, he heard someone whisper. The voice seemed to be a young woman. When he looked back at his wife, he saw the black shadow creeping up her legs. After that night, life at the Smurl house took a darker turn. The daughters were not spared either. The eldest daughter was stalked in her room every night while sleeping. A black shadow was always watching her in the distance while she slept in her bed. This evil demon had no limits and would sexually assaulted Janet and the oldest daughter, and later the second daughter too. Although during the night the entities seemed to be more active, but during the day there was no rest either. Every member of this family wasn't safe, including their pet, a beautiful, strong, tall German shepherd who was thrown against the wall like a toy. Another incident that happened was that while the girls were running and playing around the house, one of the lamps hanging from the ceiling fell on one of the young daughters, injuring her on impact. Day by day, the apparitions increased, and so did his power. Janet, who was one of his favorite victims, while doing chores at home one day, was lifted up by an invisible presence, dangling about 6 feet in the air, and then thrown across the room. Everyone at home was physically and emotionally exhausted, so Janet decides to take the girls for a walk and clear the atmosphere from being in the house, while Jack decides to stay home and watch a baseball game. At some point, he falls fast asleep. A shiver ran down his back and made him wake up with a strange feeling of fear. He got up and went to the door of his room, only to find it closed for no apparent reason. Intrigued, Jack began to struggle with the door, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not open it. Suddenly, strange sounds began to echo in the darkness of the house. Silent screams and sinister laughter filled every corner, and an inexplicable smell of sulfur permeated the air. After endless moments of anguish, the door finally gave way to Jack's desperate attempts. But what he found on the other side took his breath away. An evil and terrifying presence stood before him. A dark, spectral figure, with eyes that exuded pure evil, loomed before his horrified eyes. With no time to react, Jack was caught by an invisible force and violently thrown against the walls. Screaming for help, Jack struggled to free himself, but every attempt seemed in vain, and he only felt the pressure against his body. Violence only increased for Jack with every notion of time passing. Jack was in complete shock, trying to fathom everything that is happening. But suddenly he noticed that there was no longer any force exerting itself on him. He was alone once again. Jack had been sexually assaulted. The Smurl family was truly gripped by terror and bewildered, desperately sought help. However, every time they tried to contact paranormal experts, the phone lines were mysteriously cut and the letters never reached their destination. The neighbors, frightened by the inexplicable events they had witnessed at the Smurls' house, began to avoid the area, fearful that the malevolent presence might spread to them. Anguish and dread gripped the people, and the tranquility of the town was totally destroyed. With winter coming and doomed to have to spend more time at home, the Smurls were terrified and on the verge of a mental breakdown, until one afternoon, sitting in front of the TV, they saw some interviews of the Warrens and thought that maybe that would be their salvation, their ticket out to end that nightmare. And so they managed to contact the Warrens, a respectable couple of paranormal investigators and demonologists formed by Lorraine Warren, a clairvoyant medium, and her husband Ed Warren, a researcher and expert of the paranormal. The Warrens did not accept the case immediately, as they feared that it might be a fake, but after a week, they decided to meet with the family and agreed to visit the house and see for themselves what this family claims to have experienced. Upon arriving at the house, Lorraine and Ed could immediately tell that something was going on and that it was worth investigating further. They moved in and set up equipment inside the house so they could document what was going on in the house and provide the Smurl family with a solution. After months of documenting and experiencing for themselves all that the Smurl family had experienced, the aggressions, the apparitions, the strange sounds and unpleasant smells, the Warrens were able to identify 3 different entities living in the house. One of them was a harmless old woman who did not seem to be the cause of all the problems. In the house also lived a young girl with anger problems and possibly violent, and the last of the entities, and possibly the most dangerous, was a man who had committed the murder of his wife and her lover and then hung them in that place a century before. However, none of these entities were really the problem, as there was something else haunting the Smurl family, a powerful demonic entity that controlled the 3 spirits that lived inside the house and that had become obsessed with the family and fed off their fear, anxiety and discord it created between them. With the demon and spirits identified and all the material collected, the only thing left to do was act and try to help the Smurl family to get rid of these evil entities. The Warrens recommended group prayer sessions to try to reduce the attacks of the evil presences while they carried out the exorcisms, but nothing worked. The attacks only grew more violent, as if the demon was taking revenge on the family for having an exorcism. Desperate and with less and less hope, the Smurl made their story known to the world in the hope of finding someone who could help them, but this only made their situation worse. The press became hooked on the story and refused to leave. The weirdos camped in front of their house. Cameras flashed as soon as they went out and reporters flooded their lawn. Onlookers' cars crossed in hopes of catching a glimpse of something from another dimension. Instead of finding help, the Smurl family found themselves caught up in a media circle that only worsened their sanity. Overwhelmed by the situation and knowing that they could not do it alone, the Warrens decided to ask the Vatican for help and thus jointly fight the demon. Father McKenna responded to the Warrens' call to attend to this chilling case. He was someone the Warrens trusted, with whom they had previously worked on different cases of this type. The Warrens, in the company of McKenna, attempted a series of powerful exorcism in Latin to eliminate the entities that had taken over the house, and although at times they believed that this would work, it would not. Multiple entities appeared in the room, laughing and screaming, while objects flew around. One object was targeted at Father McKenna, which had hit him on the head and left him unconscious and unable to continue. This last exorcism only made the demon get more upset and gain more strength. The visions and nightmares that torment the members of this house increased in level. Paranormal events no longer happen only inside the house, but accompanied them to every place they went. Jack continued to suffer from these visions during his work, even when they went camping to get away from the media that harassed his family. Using nature as a refuge, there was no place where the entity did not torment and persecute them. Later, the defenseless girls began to suffer, getting sick in an alarmingly fast manner that almost led to death for one of the twins, Shannon. In 1986, a priest from the area moved into the house hoping to witness demonic forces firsthand, but nothing happened. After 2 nights without any incidents, he left. That same year, tired of public scrutiny and thinking that perhaps this would be the only solution to end their nightmare, they decided to move. They packed their bags and left the Chase Street duplex. But this was not the end that the Smurl family was hoping for. The demon was already united with his family and went with them to their new home. The Smurl continued to experience all kinds of horrors until an exorcism performed by the church in 1989 cleared all paranormal activity from their new home once and for all. Although scared from this trauma, the Smurl family was finally able to live a normal life. In 2017, Jack Smurl would die at the age of 75 after a lengthy battle with diabetes. Janet and her daughters still reside near West Pittston area. This is as much info as we were able to gather, as there is very little information available about this case. All the audio tapes and evidence that Lorraine and Ed had gathered were handed to the church at that time. Years later, someone from the newspaper reached out to the church for the audio recordings. The church denied having had any record of them. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed today's story, please give it a thumbs up button and be sure to subscribe for more contents like this.